No Malaysian affected by Afghanistan earthquake. And also China's global governance initiative to enhance sovereign equality. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. I'm Brendan Lepol. At least 812 people have been confirmed dead and 2,817 others injured in a 6.0 magnitude earthquake that struck eastern Afghanistan. The majority of the devastation occurred in the Nurgal, Suki, Watapur and Chapadara districts of Kunar province. The earthquake epicenter was about 27 kilometers from Jalalabad and it struck a shallow 8 kilometers below the Earth's surface. The United Nations Migration Agency stated that some of the most severely impacted villages in Kunar remain inaccessible due to road blockages. The UN is working with the authorities to swiftly assess needs, provide emergency assistance and stand ready to mobilize additional support. An initial $5 million had been released from the UN's Global Emergency Response Fund. Afghanistan is one of the poorest countries in the world, facing a protracted humanitarian crisis and the influx of millions of Afghans forced back to the country by neighbours Pakistan and Iran in recent years. Afghanistan is frequently hit by earthquakes, especially in the Hindu Kush mountain range, near the junction of the Eurasia and India tectonic plates. In a related development, no Malaysian in Pakistan has been reported affected following the earthquake that struck eastern Afghanistan near the border with Pakistan. The Foreign Ministry, through the High Commission of Malaysia in Islamabad, stated that it remains in close contact with local authorities in Pakistan and is monitoring the situation. The ministry advised Malaysians residing in or travelling to affected areas in Pakistan to remain vigilant, follow safety guidance issued by local authorities and stay informed through official channels. Those who have not registered their presence are strongly encouraged to do so through e-consular to ensure timely support and communication. The ministry also said it will continue to monitor the developments and provide updates when necessary. The earthquake was felt widely, including in Pakistan's capital, Islamabad. More than 1.2 million people experienced strong tremors, while reports indicated significant damage in remote mountainous areas. And in other news, Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim continues the third day of his working visit to China today with high-level talks in Beijing aimed at deepening strategic ties and expanding trade cooperation. Top on his agenda today is a courtesy call on President Xi Jinping at the Great Hall of the People at 6 p.m, underscoring Malaysia's commitment to strengthening the long-standing Kuala Lumpur-Beijing partnership. This would be the fourth time both leaders meet in person after their encounters in Putrajaya in conjunction with Xi's state visit to Malaysia in April. The Prime Minister is then scheduled to hold a bilateral discussion with Chinese Premier Li Qiang, followed by a special dinner reception hosted by Li for Datuk Seri Anwar at the Tiao Yitai State Guesthouse. Malaysian Ambassador to China, Datuk Norman Mohamad, said the dinner, hosted on behalf of Xi, is the only exclusive dinner event being hosted by the Chinese government for visiting foreign leaders during this period. Chinese President Xi Jinping has proposed the Global Governance Initiative GGI at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Plus meeting. He highlighted 5 principles for the GGI, including adhering to sovereign equality, abiding by international rule of law, practicing multilateralism, advocating the people-centered approach, and focusing on taking real actions. Regarding sovereign equality, Xi urged efforts to maintain that all countries, regardless of size, strength and wealth, are equal participants, decision-makers and beneficiaries in global governance. He also called for promoting greater democracy in international relations and increasing the representation and voice of developing countries. Xi emphasized the importance of reform and improving the global governance system to ensure that the people of every nation are the actors and beneficiaries of global governance. He further stated that these will help to better tackle the common challenges for mankind, better narrow the north-south gap, and better safeguard the common interests of all countries. China hopes Indonesia will take effective measures to ensure the safety and security of Chinese institutions and personnel in Indonesia. Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesman Guo Jiakun believes that under the leadership of President Prabowo Subianto, the Indonesian government has the ability to properly handle the domestic situation and restore stability in the country. He also said that China understands and respects the Indonesian government's decision regarding the cancellation of Prabowo's trip to China for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization SCO Tianjin Summit and other events.
中方理解并尊重印尼政府因国内需要作出有关来华安排的调整，欢迎苏吉约诺外长作为普拉博沃总统的代表出席上海合作组织天津峰会和中国人民抗日战争暨世界反法西斯战争胜利80周年纪念活动。
Prabowo had been due to attend a Victory Day parade in China to mark the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II following Japan's formal surrender. The EU will keep enforcing its tech regulations across the bloc despite threats from US President Donald Trump. Its digital chief, Henna Virkkunen, said the rules protect the users' rights, including freedom of expression. Brussels has already asserted its sovereign right to regulate the activities of tech giants wanting access to the European Union's 450 million well-off consumers. Its two main pieces of legislation, the Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act, aim to keep harmful content off the internet and ensure fair competition. But Trump, who has shaken up global trade by imposing tariffs on America's trading partners, has threatened to add levies on those he accuses of targeting U.S. tech companies. Virkkunen said a letter was addressed to the U.S. Congress reiterating that the acts are EU legislations with no extraterritorial jurisdiction in the U.S. or any other EU country. She countered claims that the EU rules amounted to censorship by stressing that the Digital Services Act upholds freedom of expression. She said its focus is to protect consumers, including against scams and fraud, but also on defending democracies and deliberate manipulation campaigns aimed at undermining free and fair elections. Britain's government has decided to suspend a scheme enabling families of refugees already in the UK to apply to join their relatives as it tries to reduce irregular immigration. Labour is struggling to stop record numbers of undocumented migrants arriving in the country by small boat, which is fueling a bitter national debate and boosting support for the anti-immigrant reform UK party. Interior Minister Yvette Cooper said she is temporarily suspending new applications to the so-called refugee family reunion route as she moves to reform the system.
So in our asylum policy statement later this year, we will set out a new system for family migration, including looking at contribution requirements, longer periods before newly granted refugees can apply, and dedicated controlled arrangements for unaccompanied children and for those fleeing persecution who have family in the UK. And we aim to have some of those changes in place for the spring.
Home Office figures released earlier showed there were almost 21,000 refugee family reunion visas issued in the year to June 2025, the vast majority handed out to women and children. Elsewhere, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has delivered her first State of the Union address, emphasizing mutual respect and cooperation with the U.S. Sheinbaum highlighted Mexico's position as the country with the lowest average tariff rate worldwide and underscored ongoing dialogue with U.S. agencies to navigate new tariff policies.
El mundo entero ha enfrentado situaciones complejas frente a la nueva realidad arancelaria establecida por el gobierno de los Estados Unidos. En este marco, hemos logrado construir una relación de respeto mutuo. México es el país con el menor porcentaje de tarifas arancelarias en promedio en todo el mundo y continuamos trabajando con las distintas secretarías de Estado de nuestro país vecino.
The president also announced the visit on Tuesday by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio to establish a security cooperation framework based on shared responsibility, mutual trust, and respect for sovereignty. According to Shane Baum, the foundation of the agreement will be cooperation without subordination. The address comes as Mexico seeks to balance its economic and security ties with the U.S., its largest trading partner, amid shifting global trade dynamics. And over in Serbia, tens of thousands of protesters silently marched in Belgrade to commemorate the deaths of 16 people killed when a roof on a renovated railway station collapsed, demanding snap elections they hope would oust President Aleksandar Vučić and his ruling SNS party. The protesters, invited by high school students, gathered in front of the old railway station in Belgrade. Protests were also held in several other towns, including Novi Sad, Kragujevac and Aleksinac. Months of protests across Serbia, sparked by the deaths of 16 people last November, have rattled Vučić and his SNS party. Protests have been mainly peaceful until 13 August, when dozens of police officers and civilians were injured in clashes. Protesters have blamed corruption for the Novi Sad railway station disaster and are demanding early elections in hopes of ousting Vučić and his party. Students, opposition groups and anti-corruption watchdogs have accused Vučić and his allies of ties to organized crime, using violence against political rivals and suppressing media freedoms. They, however, deny the allegations. And still ahead, Hamas rejects reported plan for U.S. takeover of Gaza. Hamas has denounced a plan reportedly being considered by U.S. President Donald Trump for the U.S. to take control of the devastated Gaza Strip and for its population to be relocated. Almost 2 years since Israel began its campaign in Gaza, swathes of the Palestinian territory have been reduced to rubble, and the vast majority of its population has been displaced at least once. The Washington Post reported on Sunday that the White House is considering a plan that would see Gaza become a trusteeship administered by the U.S. for at least 10 years. The goal would be to transform the territory into a tourism magnet and high-tech hub. The outline also calls for at least a temporary relocation of all Gaza's population, either through voluntary departures to other countries or into restricted, secured zones inside the territory. Hamas Political Bureau member Basim Naim slammed the proposal, asserting that Gaza is not for sale and it is part of the greater Palestinian homeland. Another official from Hamas said the group rejects all plans that abandon the Palestinians and keep the occupier on their land. They said such proposals are worthless and unjust, adding that no details of the initiative had been communicated to Hamas. On a later note, leaders of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO, have expressed deep concern over the escalation of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. In a joint statement issued after the 25th SCO summit, they strongly condemn the actions that have led to numerous casualties among the civilian population. The SCO member states stress the need for a comprehensive and lasting ceasefire, the entry of humanitarian aid to Gaza, and greater efforts to ensure peace, stability and security in the region. The statement stated that the only way to ensure peace and stability in West Asia is a comprehensive and just solution to the Palestinian issue. The declaration was adopted as part of the Tianjin Declaration. China hosted the summit, during which SCO leaders adopted a 10-year development roadmap and agreed to deepen economic and security cooperation. The bloc statement came as the death toll in Gaza rose to 63,557 since Israel's war on the enclave began in October 2023. Meanwhile, a Gaza-bound flotilla carrying humanitarian aid and activists, including environmental campaigner Greta Thunberg, departed Barcelona again, several hours after winds forced it to return to the Spanish port. The global Sumut flotilla said around 20 vessels left the Spanish city on Sunday, aiming to open a humanitarian corridor and end the ongoing genocide of the Palestinians amid the Israel-Hamas war. However, due to unsafe weather conditions, the flotilla returned to the port to allow the storm to pass. The organization said the decision was made to prioritize the safety and well-being of all participants and to safeguard the success of the mission, citing gusts that exceeded 55 kilometers per hour. Organizers said they were especially concerned about the risks the weather posed to the smaller boats. The activists from dozens of countries included Thunberg, Irish actor Liam Cunningham, and Spain's Eduard Fernandez, as well as European lawmakers and public figures. The flotilla is expected to arrive in Gaza in mid-September and comes after Israel blocked 2 previous attempts to deliver aid to the devastated Palestinian territory by ship in June and July. Media in France join others around the world in publishing banners on their front pages and websites highlighting the killing of journalists in Gaza and calling for protection for their surviving colleagues as part of a protest organized by Reporters Without Borders and non-profit organization AVA. Reporters Without Borders Global Director Thibault Breton said 220 journalists had been killed in Gaza since Israel launched its assault in October 2023. According to information gathered by the organization, he said at least 56 journalists had been deliberately targeted by the Israeli military, calling on the international community to put an end to that impunity cycle. He added more than 260 media outlets from 72 countries that joined the campaign, and many Palestinian journalists still working in Gaza are seeking evacuation from the territory. On 25 August, Israel struck Nasser Hospital in the south of Gaza Strip, killing at least 20 people, including 5 journalists who worked for Reuters, the Associated Press, Al Jazeera and others, drawing widespread international criticism. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro claimed that the U.S. is seeking a regime change in his country with a naval deployment in the Caribbean. He said 8 U.S. military vessels with 1,200 missiles were targeting his country, which he declared to be in a state of maximum readiness to defend itself. The U.S., which accuses Maduro of heading a drug cartel, has announced the deployment of warships to the South Caribbean in what it labeled an anti-drug trafficking operation.
Ellos han querido avanzar hacia lo que llaman la máxima presión, en este caso es militar. Y ante la máxima presión militar, nosotros hemos declarado la máxima preparación para la defensa de Venezuela. Ante la máxima presión, máxima preparación.
He further noted that more than 8 million Venezuelans have enlisted as reservists, Caracas had also announced increased patrols of its territorial waters. Maduro added lines of communication with the US have broken down and vowed his country will never give in to blackmail or threats of any kind. Washington has doubled to $50 million a bounty for the capture of Maduro, whose re-election in 2024 and 2018 were not recognized by the US or much of the international community amid allegations of fraud and voter oppression. Next up in sports, Speedy Tigers crushed Taiwan to top Group B at Asia Cup. Stay with us. We begin with hockey. The national men's squad wrapped up their Group B campaign at the 2025 Asia Cup in style with a thumping 15-0 victory over Taiwan at the Bihar Sports University Hockey Stadium in India. Muhammad Akimullah Anwar Isok starred with 5 goals, while Muhammad Ashran Hamzani netted 4 times throughout the match. Nur Shafiq Sumantri contributed a hat-trick with further strikes coming from Muhammad Azrai, Aizat Abu Kamal, Andy Wolfian Jeffrinus and Nick Muhammad Aiman Nikrozemi. The emphatic win confirmed Malaysia's as Group B winners with 9 points, followed by South Korea, Bangladesh and Taiwan. The Speedy Tigers had already sealed their Super 4 ticket after defeating South Korea 4-1 in their second match last Saturday. Under the tournament format, only the top 2 teams from each group progressed to the Super 4 stage, with the top 2 sides from that round contesting the final on 7 September.
So we need to get them as sweet as possible, quick for the Super 4. Okay, second round is going to be not easy, it's going to be tough because kita ada Korea, kita kena main dengan Korea lagi, lepas tu ada India dengan either Chinese or Japan. We need to get 6 points to play in the finals.
Moving on to football, Bayer Leverkusen sacked manager Erik ten Hag after just 2 Bundesliga matches in charge and said letting the coach stay on would have been an even bigger mistake. Sacked by Manchester United last October, ten Hag signed a contract with Leverkusen until 2027 in May as the successor to Xabi Alonso, who moved to Real Madrid. But the Dutchman had to contend with the sale of several of the Leverkusen stars who won the Bundesliga title last year, and his new team has struggled in the opening weeks of the new season. Ten Hag slammed the club bosses, saying sacking a coach after 2 matches was unprecedented and came as a complete surprise to him. He added a new coach deserves the freedom to implement his vision, set standards and put his stamp on the playing style. Unfortunately, he said the club's management was not willing to give him the time and trust that he needed. Meanwhile, Leverkusen sporting director Simon Rolfes said the team lacked clarity and direction under Ten Hag, and the decision was made independent of the results in Leverkusen's early matches. The 55-year-old Dutchman now has the unwanted record of the shortest tenure before dismissal in Bundesliga history. The club did not name a replacement for Ten Hag, saying the training work would be taken over by the assistant coaching staff for the time being. Real Betis have signed Manchester United forward Antony ahead of the transfer deadline after the clubs agreed a €25 million package deal. There is a 50% net sale-on clause in the deal and no payoff for the 25-year-old Brazil international. The move had been expected throughout the summer window after Antony, who failed to impress United boss Ruben Amorim after he took over the helm at Old Trafford in November, had shone on loan at Betis. Betis said in a statement that Antony's impressive performances in green and white yielded 9 goals and 6 assists in 26 appearances, playing a decisive role in the club's qualification for European competition and in reaching the historic UEFA Conference League final. The deal had been announced last Friday but hit a snag after Betis claimed it was off, reportedly due to a dispute over Antony's salary reduction when moving to Spain. The 25-year-old was a huge disappointment at Old Trafford after his €81.3 million move from Ajax in 2022. He scored just 12 goals in his 96 matches for United in all competitions, but 8 of those came in his first season, after which his form dipped dramatically. Meanwhile, Napoli announced the signing of Rasmus Højlund on loan from Manchester United with an obligation to buy, bringing an end to the striker's difficult spell at Old Trafford. British media reports suggested Napoli will pay £38 million for a permanent deal for Højlund next summer. The 22-year-old Dane signed for United from Atalanta 2 years ago, but struggled to live up to his £64 million price tag in an underperforming team. He scored 26 goals in 95 appearances in all competitions for the Premier League Giants, but was frozen out by manager Ruben Amorim ahead of this season. Højlund struggled in the English top flight last term, scoring just 4 goals in 32 games, but did net 6 times in United's run to the Europa League final. Napoli were in need of a new striker after Romelu Lukaku suffered a thigh injury in pre-season. With Italian media reporting he could be out of action until 2026. Højlund previously played in Italy for Atalanta, scoring 10 goals in 34 appearances. Antonio Conte's Napoli won the Scudetto by 1 point ahead of Inter Milan last season. Napoli have made a strong start to their title defense, winning their opening 2 matches, with summer signing Kevin De Bruyne impressing. And in tennis, Lorenzo Musetti cruised into a first US Open quarterfinal with a 6-3, 6-love, 6-1 win over unseeded Spaniard Jaume Munar. Musetti delivered a statement when going against Munar, who led their Lexus ATP head-to-head series 2-1 entering the match. He overwhelmed the Spaniard with dazzling shot-making and relentless consistency, sealing victory after just 1 hour 37 minutes. Italian 10-seed Musetti won 14 of the final 15 games and dropped only 5 points in the second set. The 23-year-old goes on to face world number 1 Jannik Sinner as he bids to reach a 3rd Grand Slam semi-final. He made the last 4 at Roland Garros this year and at Wimbledon in 2024. In the women's draw, a smiling Naomi Osaka breezed past Coco Gauff to reach the quarterfinals of the US Open, saying a happier mindset is behind her best Grand Slam performance for 4 years. The Japanese 4-time Grand Slam dominated American 3rd seed Gauff on her way to a 6-3, 6-2 victory in a surprisingly lopsided battle of former champions. Osaka conceded just 2 points off her serve in the entire opening set, which she sealed when the struggling Gauff double faltered on set point. The second set was a similar story, with Osaka giving up only 4 points on serve, while pressuring Gauff relentlessly, moving the American around the court with a series of powerful, accurate ground strokes. Osaka edged clear after breaking Gauff to go 4-2 up, and then broke the American again to seal a quarterfinal against 11th seed Karolina Mukova. The victory sends Osaka into her first Grand Slam singles quarterfinal since she reached the last 8 of the 2021 Australian Open, a tournament she went on to win. And that's it on World Today. In our top story, no Malaysian affected by Afghanistan earthquake. Tune in to Malaysia Tonight, coming up 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and saluran Berita RTM. Till then, I'm Brendan Paul, Malaysia Madani, Rakyat, Disantuni. Thank you for watching and take care.